Good afternoon. Good Friday. Happy Friday. It is a quick Friday evening session on Let's Talk Live. Most of you probably had lunch already, but I wanted to jump into it real quickly. Our topic for today is evidence of bona fide marriage. So if you are filing any kind of marriage-based application, usually that's for a petition for a green card, or in some cases, if you're naturalizing based on a 3-year marriage to a US citizen, you're going to have to produce evidence that that marriage is in fact bona fide. The evidence is critical because one of the things USCIS is doing is waiving interviews, and we had a post about that earlier in the year. But one of the main way we can get that interview waived is if you have sufficient evidence. So you want to produce that evidence with your application, especially if it's a green card application, and then bring it to your interview if you have an interview on the green card or a naturalization 3-year application. And types of evidence that USCIS is looking for is proof of a relationship. That's what it is. Not just the fact that you've married and you have a marriage license or a marriage certificate, but use your evidence to tell the story of your relationship, right? And there are lots of different types of couples, couples at all different ages, and therefore some are already well established. This may be your second or third marriage or relationship, and therefore you don't want to have to go in and commingle all of your assets at this stage of your life and all of that just for this purpose. But you can tell that story with other supporting evidence that you do have. So it's critical that you have a substantial amount of evidence. And the main evidence that they're looking for is proof that you live together, because that is a requirement for approval of a green card application. If it's an adjustment of status, that you are in fact living with your spouse. We know some people have long distance marriages, but you want to establish that this is our main home, even if one spouse works outside of the area or outside of the location. You guys have a central marital home which you split and share together. That is important. And then you should be able to explain as to why you're living separately, if that is in fact the case, whether it's for job opportunity, whether it's one spouse going ahead of the other spouse and the other spouse will eventually join them in the future. And you can document that plan through your affidavit. The marriage should be it's telling the story of their relationship, the courtship, the marriage, and present day, how that relationship has evolved, and also using the affidavit to explain any deficiencies in the evidence that you have. So if you're not filing joint tax returns, your affidavit should be used to explain why you're not filing a joint tax returns. If you don't have joint bank statements, you're going to use your affidavit to explain why you don't have joint bank statements or why it's not possible, because one party to the marriage may have credit worthiness issues. They've overdrafted on accounts and therefore now they're not able to open a traditional bank account. You want to explain those things in your personal affidavit or declaration in support of your marriage. Joint taxes, that's one of the key financial assets that you're looking for. Is are you filing your taxes jointly? If your spouse doesn't have a social security, or in the prior year didn't have a social security number, and you couldn't file them or add them on your taxes, you want to make sure that at some point through the process you're going to do that in the future. You file taxes together, and if you absolutely cannot file together, you can proceed to filing separately. But you want to make sure you're married filing separately. You don't want to tell me that, hey, I'm married, but on my taxes it clearly says that I'm single, because you're going to have to explain that discrepancy to immigration, and it could possibly be enough of a red flag issue for your application to be denied. You want to see if you own proof that you live together. You don't have to own a home, but if you're renting, whether you're renting an entire home and you have a lease, you want to have that. If you're renting a room in a home, you want to make sure that your landlord or the person that you're renting from is producing some proof that you live there, whether it's going to be an actual lease or proof of payments. You want to get receipts for the payments that you're making and making sure that your landlord is making that receipt out to both parties, indicating that you're both living there, right? Credit cards, debts, um, joint debts in general. So any kind of credit card loan agreement, if you took furniture out, things like that, proof of that. You want to have all of that. If you apply for something and you get denied, if you, for example, you apply for a credit card or a store card together as a couple, you get denied, I think that is just as good proof as if you did have the account, because at least you are trying or you're making efforts to intermingle your financial life. So that's important. You want to have that as well. Household bills. I think this is one of the more archaic evidence that they ask for, because most people don't have joint bills, but you can have a bill in just one party's name. And my recommendation is generally to add the other party to the couple, the other spouse, to the account as an authorized user and get proof of that from your utility company. So if it's a light bill, one party can be on the account, the other is an authorized user, and you submit that proof that they are on this, they have authority to make decisions with respect to this particular utility. Same thing with insurances. If you have personally, any one of the parties or to the marriage has life insurance, car insurance, health insurance, if you can do so, add the other person to it. With auto insurance, if you have auto insurance, your spouse does not have a driver's license or they have a terrible driving history that's going to affect your rate, include them on the policy as a non included driver, right? Meaning, yes, I know this person lives in this household, but they're not going to be covered by this insurance policy. And you don't have to explain that necessarily to your insurance company, but you can have that as additional proof that yes, we declare that we've lived together, but they're not covered on my under the actual insurance policy. So that is also very good proof. If you have any estate planning documents, that can also be important, and that will run the gamut: your prenuptial agreement, your will, your trust, all of those things. If you put them in place, make sure it clearly indicates who your spouse is and if you're making any provisions for that spouse as part of that marriage. Those are also credible evidence. Bank statements. One thing I want to tell you about bank statements, it's not just the ability of having two persons on account. What USCIS is looking for is that you guys have a joint account together. You're both putting your income into that account, and you both are actively using it. They want to see the activity from both cards. They want to see transactions from both parties. And they want to see that to some extent, this is your centralized account you're using to pay your household bills. So activity on the bank statement is good. I've seen too many times people bring in, hey, I have a joint account on there. And you look at 6 month worth of statements and they maybe put in $5 a month and there's zero transactions. That's not really telling a tale of your relationship, right? The evidence should tell a tale of a shared life together. And that's why they want to see that activity on the bank statements. Children, if you have children or one party has children, you want to make sure that the spouse is on the children's school records, right? They could be listed as an emergency contact, an additional party for pickup, though that is also very important evidence of a shared life experiences together. Same thing for medical records. If the person is listed there as an authorized person on medical records for any minor children that the couple may have, that's also good evidence for you to put. Some employers do this, but you should check with your employers, and most employers have the capacity to do it, to ensure that you have on file with your employer emergency contact information. So, and you make sure that you definitely um, list your spouse on the emergency contact information and put that evidence together. So, proof of a bona fide marriage is definitely a critical part of any marriage based immigration application. And there the tons of different types of evidence that you can look for. So anything that you're doing in your daily life with your spouse, your text messages, your call logs, those are all good information of a shared life together, and you should keep records of that. I've had clients print out their WhatsApp message transcripts. Sometimes I get thousands of pages of WhatsApp conversations that not just exist since the marriage or 10 days prior to the interview, but predate the marriage itself, because we're talking about shared life experiences, shared life together, shared finances. It's not just a marriage on paper that's important. That's what USCI wants to see, that you guys are so sufficiently intertwined in each other's life that it will be very hard for you to walk away once this immigration benefit is granted. So, any evidence that indicates that, trips, if you guys are taking family trips, keep the receipts, keep the booking, show that you guys sat together on the plane. Um, all of those are going to be very important in establishing bona fide. And the more evidence that you have, and the more boxes that USCIS can check off on their control sheets to evaluate whether this case is approvable, the better. So you want to have multiple pieces of evidence spanning the course of your relationship, not just one piece of evidence from one moment in time. So when I'm talking about when you're submitting evidence, you don't want just one bank statement. We want to have at least three, four, five, six bank statements from every single year the couple has been together. All right. So that's our Let's Talk Live today. If you need help with your marriage based petitions, definitely contact our office 407 802 3223. This is not intended to be legal advice, but it's for informational purposes for anyone interested in hearing about immigration and the requirements under the law. Call us 407 802 3223. Happy, have a great weekend.